This is Covenant of Justice. I'm Isaiah Jerez. So here today with Kam Green. She has held many roles, including storyteller, public speaker, and community coach. She is currently the program director for the Las Vegas Metro Police Department Foundation. And Kam, what has brought you to this position that you are at now with Las Vegas Metro Foundation?
So, an effort to help the community thrive. That's my mission in life. And so, I love the idea that the foundation exists to support LVMPD on their initiatives. You know, our three pillars are community engagement, training, and equipment. And we get to advocate on behalf of the police and also raise funding that they don't have in their budget for them to be able to go out in the community and do things, build bridge gaps, build trust, and make relationships. And to me, that's amazing. I've lived in a lot of different places. And I will say LVMPD is doing a lot of great things to build those relationships and go beyond just the safety and well into the serving part.
And so, talking specifically about what you're doing with Metro and with the foundation, what are some of the events that you guys have that helps you get out into the community and to engage in the community?
So we have a lot of events. We have some events that we call our flagship or core, events that we support the police officers on. So it could be anything from National Night Out, which are held in areas all around the city, and it's an opportunity really for people to come out in the community and meet officers, to find out about what they're doing, to find out about, even some of the cool equipment they're using. Some of the National Night
Mm.
Outs, they have SWAT out there, they have the K9 and things like that. But also, again, I'm going to keep saying the word relationship. It's about building relationship and having opportunity to engage with an officer outside of maybe an incident and seeing their people. They live in the community, they have families in the community. And so that's one of our big events. We also do a Thanksgiving distribution where we get together with the officers and we raise funding and we pack meals for families. And these officers hand deliver these to selected families in need at a time, where, people need food and things like that. We also do a program called Shop with a Cop, another opportunity to build that relationship and give something to somebody at a time where they might not be able to have a Christmas or an enjoyable holiday. They're funded and sponsored and they get to shop in partnership with, an officer. We also do something which is coming up for us at the end of July called backpack distribution. And with the officers again, we pack over 1,000 backpacks with back to school equipment. The officers select families, they hand deliver them to their door and start them off with a nice backpack and 15 to 16 school items that they can have to start off the school year.
Yeah, and I like what you say, like your main focus is on building that relationship, letting people recognize, hey, this is your neighbor, this is someone that your child goes to, they maybe have children that your child goes to school with as well, right? And so focusing on that relationship, I guess you're talking about in environments that are kind of more inviting for the community.
Exactly. Yeah, we call them like low entry, low barrier items. We have, some programs that are more intensive, but when you think about
Mhm.
like we do Easter events, Halloween events, and different things like that, that's an opportunity where you can come out and that could be the entryway. Like, hey, come get this Easter basket and do an Easter egg hunt with us. While we're there, we can talk and you can see, hey, these officers are real people, like you said, and they have kids that go to school with your kids. And so we see those as opportunities to have just regular, engagement opportunities that you might not have with an officer. And there is that disconnect. You see the police over here and then people over here, but they're people. They just happen to wear, a badge.
Yeah, because a lot of times the communication that we have with the police officer when they're out there focusing on public safety, right? They're out there, they're guarded, they're watching their back all the time. And then if they're in the middle of an investigation, right, they're generally not friendly because their main focus is public safety at that time. And so, with that communication gap generally where if they're in the community, there's a huge spread in authority, right? I've got to listen to the officer. Maybe he's not going to tell me or she's not going to tell me everything that's going on,
Yeah.
right? She's going to probably keep me in the dark in some of those aspects. And so how is what you're doing kind of bridging that communication gap where I don't only see the officer as just someone in my community who's doing an investigation, but someone that I can also help come out and support.
Yeah. So I think, the protect part, right? So that is their one of their main jobs, to come out and to protect and to make sure the community is safe, to, go after the bad guy and things like that. And a lot of times that's what we see. And when they're in their job, like I'm a mom, sometimes I have to give my mom face, right?
Hmm.
And that's that part of it. But the serve
Hmm.
part is where we get to show up and where we get to support. So the community engagement, the events, the mentoring programs and things like that, that's the part that the LVMPD is really working on, to show up in that different way outside of having to do the protect part to break down those barriers and to build the relationships. And it's so, so important because, oh, wow, we had a student who went through one of our mentoring programs, and she spoke at an event, and she's like, I never thought I would have a friendship with a cop. Like, I just never saw
Mm.
that. Where she was growing up and the environment where she was in, she often saw them just on the protect, 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 which it didn't always look friendly. That existed, but when they showed up, they needed to do that particular job. When she was in this program, she got to see them as a servant, a partner, a human, and things like that, and say, hey, this does exist. So it's like we as a community do have to be able to turn that off. Like, here's a job that they must do. But the way that we do that is saying, hey, we're going to support these community engagement events. The officers are going to show up and develop these different programs and be out in the community. And it gives them an opportunity to build that other relationship side, which is the serving side.
So let's talk a little bit about the mentorship program, because that's kind of interesting, right? You're talking about one individual that had this experience that changed her perspective. What the mentorship is this with adolescents, or
So
who are?
we do a lot of community, and we support a lot of community engagement that youth community engagement that LVMP does. So everything from, they have sports programs, soccer programs, and things like that. The particular program that I was speaking of, which is Dream, is a 12-week mentorship program, which is really designed to connect with students and youth who maybe have been justice impacted, already involved, or have been identified by their school, maybe some chronic absenteeism or something, or maybe a parent was like, I'm having some trouble. So those students are referred over to the officers. They're invited into this free 12-week program where they get life skills, mentorship. They get to go on field trips. They get to go behind the scenes at the Raiders Stadium, UFC, but they're also getting life skills, and they're also building that relationship with officers. They have their phone numbers because they have a full-time team to say, hey, we want to make sure that you feel like you can call us when you need something, and we can be a part of your success, not just you feel like we're coming to get you when you've done something wrong. And so I think that's game changing. Like, I've been able to see a couple of the cohorts go through in the last few months, and you see these kids, their relationship change, their vision change, and then they ask them, like, how did you feel when you started? Well, I was kind of nervous, and I thought I was going to get in trouble. And I'm like, even myself, I'm
Mm.
a pretty good driver and stuff like that. I tense up a little bit when officer, but it's
Yeah.
because of sort of that historical
Hmm.
in the relationship. And so these programs where they get to see them, they celebrate their birthdays, they're working with their parents, they have family programs. It changes, how you see the person. You get to see them as a whole individual, and again, that other side. So I think it's absolutely critical.
And like these types of programs are unique. Like I remember growing up in the 80s, they had the DARE program at school, and the officers would be coming there and talking about drugs, and that they're there to help us out and whatnot. And is this just something being repackaged that we from what we had in the 80s with DARE, or what is different now, and what is like Metro's that what is the foundation's focus on? Okay, what did we learn back then with those different programs, and how can we then improve it?
I think what we learn, and we continue to learn, that it's going to take more than one program and one thing and one opportunity, and it's going to take, an ecosystem. And so the officers work with schools, they work with community partners and things like that. It's not going to just be one mentoring program for 12 weeks. They do a lot of work with working with workforce readiness, because, okay, you go through this program, you learn these skills. Some of the kids who are 17, 18, 19, now what? The reality is that you don't have the money to pay for things, so you're likely to slip back in. Okay, let's get you into some job placement. Let's help you work with families so that they have the resources for food and things like that. So it's really about a complete wraparound and sort of hand in hand, a soft handoff. I'm gonna hand off to you. I'm gonna hand off to you, and that's what I think a lot of us are learning in the community engagement space. Is it's not just about us. It's about being a part of an ecosystem, and we know where that next handoff is, so nobody slips through the cracks.
I mean, that's interesting, right? 'Cause you're talking about 12-week mentorship program, right? The kids come in, they build those relationships with cops, but then what happens after that, right? It's how do you really show that you care about that child, right? I guess making sure that they succeed, and what's the next step for them, whether or not it's job placement program or some type of education, or
Yeah, and I would
is.
say with that particular program, speaking of Dream,
Mhm.
that is very much a part of it. And there is career readiness, there's introduction to different community partners. They have guest speakers that come in, they have life mentors. Yesterday, I was at a session last night. They worked through, what is the SMART goal? What does that look like? They talked about financial readiness. Does anybody have a bank account? Is a need versus a want? So it's really trying to plant
Mhm.
those seeds. And then also, once they're a member of this program, and as long as they stay connected, they're connected. So it's not like you finish the program, don't ever never talk to me again. It's like you still have their number. And a lot of the students yesterday, the program I was at, they had already graduated and they were moving on. Some of them were working, but they wanted to come back to be mentors and also just to be there, to have something, a positive space to connect. So it's not a you finish again, be gone. It's a okay, you finish, now what? Kind of thing. I think, and ideally it would be great, like even some of the officers talk about their story growing up in Vegas and maybe having some trouble of their own, but then deciding to be an officer. Like those are the kind of stories we would love to tell. This kid went through the dream program, they got the support, they stayed connected, they became a cadet, and now they work for LVMPD or anywhere.
Hmm.
But that's the kind of mindset that they go in when they're doing these mentoring programs.
Yeah, and it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, what you're talking about is okay, we have these programs, and it's just not like a one-stop shop. Like everything's going to come in here, get resolved, recognizing, hey, this is a program to just have a connection in the community, to then continue to build the relationship over time, and recognizing that the foundation can't do it all,
Right, yeah,
right?
and even so, there's a dream program, and like I said, there's other youth programs from the sports programs. So there's a program called the Bolden Lions, and they really focus on kids who are interested in soccer, but who might not have the capacity. Sports is expensive to engage in it, to go to the right tournaments, to be seen. So we support them funding that. The officers actually lead the training and connect them, and they've placed a lot of kids in college based on that. So giving them access to that. So it's like different kinds of programs, and then like I said, the other events where it's just making that initial connection where you feel comfortable to have the conversation and talk to them. And
Hmm.
then we have our community oriented policing teams that actually do, I was talking to one of them yesterday, and they're like, oh, we want to host a meeting at one of our apartment complexes that's having some difficulty, and we want to get some food for it just so we can see what are the barriers you're struggling with. So it's definitely not just a youth program for 12 weeks or just a holiday party. Consistently every day, and I can say that I'm proud to be able to engage with this. It's like, what else can we do here? How else can we engage here? We're seeing this here, and they're having these conversations and really thinking about how deep and intentional they can be. And it's not just the one, they know it's not a one size fits all. It's different things. It could be sports, it could be mentoring, it could be a meeting with families, it could be an Easter egg hunt, and that's the commitment.
Yeah, being in there and the community, right?
Yep.
For a different reason other than for just public safety.
Yep.
And so how do the Metro fund this, right? I mean they're strained as it is. There's so much going on, and there's so much public safety. How do they find the funding to do
So
this?
interestingly enough, yes, the community engagement portion is not into the budget, and that's where we exist. We exist in the space to serve and to advocate and to fundraise and to say, hey, community, hey, donors, would you be willing to support this community engagement? And we highlight the programs, and then we also highlight some of the outcomes and some of the pillars in terms of building the trust and things like that. And so we're very, very fortunate here that we have a lot of community members who are saying, yes, I want to support that. Yes, I see the value in that. And so we sometimes might host an event, or we might just do a general ask to say, hey, we need this amount of money to support 10 kids to be able to go through this soccer program. And these are the outcomes they've seen. And people are like, oh, yeah, we want to do that. So that's literally a huge reason why we exist, is to go out and to take that lift off of the officers and to find that funding so that they can do the things that, we feel that are valuable, which is building that community engagement part.
And looking out 5 to 10 years, like to say that the foundation has been successful, where would you like to see the communication? How would you measure that, the communication between the officers and the community in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think the conversation would be like, we build new advocates, we build new people in the community from, the little ones all the way up, where they are telling the story of, oh yeah, I did this with an officer. Oh yeah, I was in this program. Oh yeah, ran up to an officer. We work with Bombas Socks, and they give us 10,000 pairs of socks a year, and the officers give them out. Oh, an officer gave me a pair of socks, when I needed it. So the conversation then becomes all these other touch points of engagement, of relationship, humanity, connection, and support. And then, like, yeah, when I was speeding that one time, they also pulled me over. But I have 90 other
Hmm.
points of engagement that are relevant, that help me thrive, versus that one, oh, yeah, when I got in trouble, they came after me. And I think
Hmm.
that would be, the end goal, is that they're seen, as a whole person and as a part of the community, and that they have less of the protect and police work to do, and it becomes more about the engagement and being a part of, a thriving community, and we can point to, and people are advocating even louder than we do. I think that would be the goal.
Yeah, so you could look at like the individual responses, right? Looking at certain members of the community that have definitely taken a different path because of the involvement in the mentorship, or because the cops, come to have lunch at the apartment complex. Is there a way to look kind of more broadly with the community to say, okay, is there some type of measurable to look at and say, okay, yeah, this has been a success, and this is something that we can replicate in other communities or continue to make better here in Las Vegas as well?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we definitely look at is stats. Obviously, we look at, or the officers are looking at stats of recidivism, or, students who go through the, like, say, a mentorship
Mhm.
program. Are they staying out of trouble and they're in touch with, they might have had an incident where they have a parole officer. So that would be true tracking of, did they have another engagement with the law, or did they go on to get a job and, stay out of trouble, if you will. So there's a lot of tracking on that system. And then annually we look at, okay, what are the sheriff's priorities? And then how are we engaging and working towards that? And community engagement is a big part of that, because if community members are willing to communicate their needs and they're willing to ask for help and they're willing to partner, you'll have less crime, you'll have less issues, you'll have less things like that. And it starts with people being okay and people feeling like they have the support versus going inward. And that's where a lot of the, trouble and, confusion comes from.
Hmm. So the measurable in large part will be kind of less crime will be like the big measure to say, okay, has this been successful?
Yep, less
Mm.
crime,
Mhm.
yeah, more community engagement, and again, some of the numbers that we want to see decrease, decrease from
Mhm.
traffic to whatever it may be, because people are aware and connected and feel like, yeah, I do want to make sure that I'm contributing to a thriving community and not just sort of one of one.
And not only being that individually, but then they themselves become advocates, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. And so and I really like mentorship programs. I'm sorry I keep coming back
No,
to
it's
that.
okay.
So I'm just trying to think, for the mentorship programs, how do they how do they focus on that with the students that are there, right? As they leave, how do they kind of help them become advocates, not only of themselves, but for the community as well?
I think it's a part of, from day one, of the mentoring program. They're asking questions and, saying, hey, what do you, think of us? Or how did you feel when an officer approaches you? So allowing them to be honest and have that space to have those conversations. And then as they go through and show and build the trust. Like, hey, we are here for you. We do want to see you succeed. We do want to, help you be successful. What do you need? How can we help you? We want you to feel like you can come to us and ask for help, which isn't always the case. How many times would you
Hmm.
walk past an officer and think, if you were struggling with something, whether it be a food insecurity, water, or job, would you ask an officer? Maybe not,
Hmm.
right? But that's the bridge that they're trying to build. You could ask us, and we are connected. And they're the most connected, and actually the most likely to be someone who knows about every single thing going on in the pulse of the city. Yet we don't lean into that. That's because, often we don't know about it. So I think the goal is building that relationship and making them aware, and then getting to the end of the program to say, like, hey, this is someone I can turn to, for support. This is someone who wants to see me be successful and wants our community to be successful. And so again, like I said before, there's students who've gone through the program, even in the time that I've been here, that have come back. They're not making them come back. They're not asking them to come back. There's no obligation, but they built that relationship. They saw that growth and they want to be a part of it, and I think that's the shift and the change that they want to see.
Yeah, what a huge perspective, right? So you're not only seeing the cops as someone who's going to come in when something goes wrong, public safety wise, but yeah, this is someone that is connected to the community,
Hmm.
right? I mean, they're out there on the streets 40 plus hours a week,
Yeah.
and they know everybody,
Who better
right?
to ask, and
Yeah,
but sometimes if you
yeah,
ask 10 people today, would you ask an officer for help on X, Y, and Z?
yeah.
9 out of 10 people would say no, but you absolutely should be.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking for a new job, right? Go to
You
your
would.
friends and stuff like, why ask the police
Right, of
officer,
course.
right?
And the
But
police
he's,
department has jobs too.
yeah,
What do
they
you know?
themselves, yeah,
Like, maybe you could
yeah,
work for them, because not
right.
only do they have officer jobs, they have
Uh-huh,
civilian opportunities, like in the
uh-huh.
community engagement office or other offices, or 911 dispatchers and things like that. So it's like, actually, they're actually a pretty good resource to start with. And
Hmm.
it's again building that trust and communication and awareness to say, like, oh, that makes perfect sense. And so that's what we're trying to build, is like, it makes perfect sense for me to go ask officer or go into a police department and say, hey, I need help with
Hmm.
something, as opposed to, I would never do that. and that would be for me seeing more people do that, as a personal goal. But I think, with the foundation, getting to that point, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, and how powerful to say, to step back and say, okay, the foundation is not solving or doesn't want to solve everything, but let's get all the other organizations
Oh,
involved,
yeah.
right? Of course, Metro's at the center of it,
Right.
but these other organizations are there to kind of support. So how does it work with Metro then? Because of course Metro's got their public safety, right? And I mean that's what they're there for generally. How does that work with the foundation and Metro to help advocate for the community? I guess for the foundation, right? I mean, the main focus is the department, but as well, it seems like you're almost an advocate for the community.
Yeah, so with Metro, they actually, with LVMPD, they do have a community engagement team, which, focuses a lot just on community engagement. And then they have officers who have, regular day jobs, if you will, who do that in their spare time. They do it in their overtime, and things like that. So we work in collaboration. We meet, sometimes weekly, depending on the department, monthly, just to talk about, hey, what do you all need? What are you all seeing? How can we support? And one of the things we say is, how can we help you with what, you're trying to do? What are your outcomes? What are your visions? And like we talked about with the DARE program, there's not a one size fit all. A community over here in Bolden might need something completely different from a community over here in Summerlin. And we need to know that, whether it's a dollar, whether it's a type of program, so that we can say, oh, let's start, turning the wheels or talking to people to see how we can support you, in doing that. So we try to keep the lines of communication open, and then yes, go from what are the LVMPD's priorities and what are they seeing, and then what kind of program funding and things that you support from that, because we talked a lot about community engagement, but we also do training, and equipment as well. So maybe it's something that they need, to do cameras or something like that that's not in the budget. That's something we funded in the past so that they can move those things along. The police, the current sheriff's, his vision is to be the safest, city in the country, and so that's a part of it as well, because they do have a job to do. Primarily we want them to be safe, we want the community to be safe, and so we have the opportunity to say, okay, we're going to go out and raise X number of dollars so you can try out this technology that's going to help us be safe, help you going to solve crime quicker, help reduce, police officer involved shootings. There's a lot of that, that also goes on as well. But again, it comes down from, what does the community need? What are you seeing? And then how can we support, that, from whether it's connecting you to somebody or finding the money. That's how we show up.
And then one last question, and hopefully this isn't too loaded, but what about when there are community relation issues, like most recently with some of the ICE protests or the immigration protests, where, all of a sudden whatever the officers are doing, everybody has their phone, and then, of course, the bad story gets told as what happens. How does the foundation come in and address those community relations issues or those public relations issues?
I think it's an ongoing thing that we consider, and obviously the officers consider, and a part of doing consistent community engagement is to be proactive and not reactive. And so you
Mhm.
hope that somebody else is standing there to be able to advocate, as well. But I think, when those specific moments and very, specific things happen, it might cause us to react and say, hey, we need to, hold an event, or we need to do something different, or we need to talk about something different. But really separating the job, when this has to be done according to the law, versus the compassion and the humanity, and things like that. There's always going to be a bad story. There's always going to be, something. There's even going to be times where somebody did something wrong. Like, that was not okay.
Mhm.
That is, just how we exist. And it's not just within the police department, it's in life. But I think the goal is to have enough consistency with engaging and being there and showing up in a positive way, that when those moments happen, it doesn't derail and tear everything down. It's like, hey, that happened. It's an unfortunate thing. We're seeing this, but we want to make sure you can come talk to us. One of the events that happens monthly, is Coffee with a Cop. And that's an opportunity where it is an opportunity to sit down where they're not in the middle of an investigation or a case, and to ask maybe some of those tough questions. Now, of course, they can't share certain private information, but they can say, hey, we want to hear about that. And they host those at McDonald's, usually around the city, or sometimes at their command centers. And literally, it's a time to come and chat and ask questions. And they say sometimes people come out and they grill them. They're like, what about this? What about this? From street lights to, whatever. And then sometimes they just come and talk. So I think those ongoing things that's the key and the pillar to building the relationship. So when something does happen, the communication is already there to have a conversation about this hard thing. And it's not just, well, I never see you, you never show up, or you only show up when that. Like, that's what I think they're doing well, is that you can't say that. You can't say that they didn't show up in these other spaces.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. So the foundation has a lot of activities going on. Is there something specific coming up soon that that we should be made aware of?
Yes, in August 19th, we have our annual Wonder Woman of Metro event, which we're very excited. Sandra Douglas Morgan, the president of the Raiders, is going to be our keynote speaker. And this event is an opportunity to honor the women in Metro, to honor their accomplishments, to celebrate them. And it's going to be at the JW Marriott. And so we would love for, people to attend. You can attend as an individual, you can sponsor, you can donate an item. And it's going to be August 19th at JW Marriott. And you can find out more information on our website at lvmpdfoundation.org.
Great. Thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.